Hey, yo, what up, Bodega Podcast? You already know who it is. It's one half of the sexiest Puerto Rican studs on this planet, Ortiz, baby. And shout out to all the Bodega Podcast listeners. Ow!
This is Agatha Carter, and you're watching the Urban Wrestling Network.
Yo, this is the Lucha Thug, the one-man Lucha gang, El Rey Gordo himself, the King Fat Boy Papo Esco, and y'all rocking with the Urban Wrestling Network.
This is Shane Taylor, CEO of Shane Taylor Promotions, and you are listening to the Urban Wrestling Network.
Hey, you guys, this is Christi Jaynes, and you're listening to the Urban Wrestling Network.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of On the Mic with Mike. I am your host, Mike Larkin, and joining me today is professional wrestler, a damn good one at that, Molly Spartan. Molly, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
Hi, Mike. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are very welcome. First and foremost, I got to say, people, what a week of professional wrestling. Molly and I were just talking about this before we got on air. NXT UK takeover with the prelude, NXT takeover, each and everything just in the week of professional wrestling from the Hall of Fame going into WrestleMania this weekend. What a week in professional wrestling, Molly.
It's incredible. I mean, we're recording this on Friday, so SmackDown is about to go, and I'd be nervous if I was on that roster. Like, not only are you the show just before Mania, but you're the show that has to follow 2 nights of NXT. Like, they've got a tough one, but hopefully it's going to be an exciting show as well, because so far, being able to produce such high content in such an unstable and uncertain time is very impressive.
Absolutely, and I look at it from a stance too, where we're going to talk with the women here first, because first and foremost, it's been a long time, and she has been such on the rise, the grind, and the determination and grit. Raquel Gonzalez is your new NXT Women's Champion, defeating Io Shirai. I got to say, from where she started, where we saw her in the Mae Young Classic, to where she is now during the singles run, the stuff that she's done with Dakota Kai, well deserved for Raquel Gonzalez.
Like, I think I'm a little bit in love with her. I'll be honest. Like, she's just incredible. She is the new, she's not the new China, because no one can be China, but she's the closest, I think, that has shades of that. Like, even with her work with Dakota Kai, very much sort of mirrored back to China, looking after Michaels and Triple H in the Attitude Era, sort of the early 97, 98 China. But yeah, I remember, like, the first time I'd ever heard about her was when it's no secret, my husband is Wolfgang, who's one half of the Gallus tag team, and he was over at the Performance Centre, and his exact words to me were, there's this girl in the Performance Centre, and she, at that point in time, for some reason, they were trying to make her like the female Stan Hansen, and she was going about with like chaps on and had like the rope with the cowbell and swinging about, and I was like, that sounds incredible. Like, I was just like, that sounds like a dream. Like, but obviously she's developed since the first time, which must have been 4 or 5 years ago, before she was really on television. She was obviously trying this sort of angle, but now she's went from that to winning the NXT championship. Like, it's incredible, and it's such a great journey, and it's so inspirational as well for girls to sort of, that aren't tiny and petite as well, and I fall in that character, sort of that category of women, that you can be this big and strong and dominant woman and become a champion. You don't need to fall in within this mold of what society might say you need to be. You can be strong and beautiful and dominating, and that's okay.
Now, Miss Spartan, I'm very glad that you brought this up, because I'm going to say this right now. Man, there's a lot of beautiful women like Miss Spartan here who are just with the size, with their stature, and their overall prowess. I got to say, I appreciate that, because I remember as a young man when Beth Phoenix first came into the WWE, when she first came in with Trish Stratus, the Mickie James storyline, like a specimen, a beauty, but she could work. I mean, she would put you in the chicken wing, the glam slam, everything encompassed into that package. There was something that would draw you and gravitate you to someone like a Beth Phoenix. Now, with you, Miss Molly Spartan, with Raquel Gonzalez, there's just something about that from the internal and external strength that really gravitates with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it often when I'm asked in sort of how the story of like, how did you become a professional wrestler is quite a common question I would get in interviews and podcasts and the like. And I do talk about how there was a point in time where I just never seen myself as being one of the wrestlers. Like I spent so long striving to work in wrestling that I went down the production route and like have a degree in television, etc., etc. But the only person that I would say when I was sort of at the point in time when I was trying to, when you're a teenager and you're at high school and you're trying to figure out like what you want to do with the rest of your life and like deciding it was wanting to be in wrestling, but the only person I felt that had any relation to that mirrored anything back to me was Beth, because she wasn't this, and I've just never been the small petite one. Like no matter what happened in life, I was just always slightly bigger than everybody else, and I didn't have any sort of crazy body issues with how I looked and how I was. I was always quite comfortable and confident in my own skin, but I just felt like the thing that I loved for so long didn't reflect back to me. It was very much a case of it was when they were sort of doing the diva search and like, it's nothing against her as a performer. She was an incredible performer, but I never seen myself in someone like Kelly. That just wasn't who I was ever going to be. But Beth, on the other hand, she had some sort of, there was at least a physical resemblance that I could see. And she wasn't scared to be big and strong, because I never was either. The only issue I had back then was there was nobody reflected my vocal presence, let's say. Like no one ever sounded like me or came from where I came from. I mean, the only person that sort of come from Scotland beforehand that was close was Drew. And when he went over there, they ended up making him go for elocution lessons so they can understand him. And so it just felt like I wasn't for that job, that role. Obviously, that's very much changed, and things happened in my life that I ended up going for it and being comfortable and realising that my strength and my size, etc., was not a hindrance, but a selling point for who I am as a performer, which obviously now reflects in people like Raquel, and seeing someone of her size and stature and her determination and graft just emanates, and hopefully there's little girls or young women, young teenagers who reflect on her and realise that they can do this if they really want to, and not be a case that I was in at one point where I felt like I would just be rejected if I tried. So although I was very determined to still work in wrestling and found another route, and that never stopped me from trying to work in wrestling, it was just more a case of I just felt like I'm not for that part of that world. But now, yeah, there's all the beauty of this sort of women's revolution, let's say, is the fact that there are women of all shapes and sizes and backgrounds and everything, you know what I mean, that allows you to, you don't have to just fit in one mold. You don't have to be part of a diva search or that sort of thing anymore. You can be from wherever in the world, you can be whatever size, whatever background or anything, and you still can do this, as long as you can find your uniqueness and embrace that. Then you can definitely be part of this crazy world of wrestling.
Beautifully said from a stand too, like from where we were in 2004, like you said, the diva search. Like when Christi Hemme first won the diva search, and she's going against Trish Stratus at WrestleMania 21. You go from Christi, you go from Candice Michelle, you go from all the girls, Eve Torres and such, whether it be in the diva search. Like I remember that time period from like 2004 to 2008 when a lot of the diva search girls were doing the Playboy covers, and then here's the women's championship match at WrestleMania. We've come a long way from that, and I also look at it from a stance too. Like you were talking about the production side of things. I mean, whether you're an interviewer or production side, really working in the overall auspices of wrestling besides not getting into it. I also look at it from a stance too. You're like a Jill of all trades. You did one side of things, and now here you are in wrestling. That just shows your overall acumen, your overall grit to where you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing against that era. Like the girls that came from that all worked incredibly hard in order to, and I know this phrase gets coined all the time, but pave the way for the ones going forward. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when they talk about, I was actually watching Beth's Icon sort of documentary, and when she stepped away was when she felt like there wasn't really a progression for the women. The girls were still working hard and doing their best, but at the same time there was still this Christmas elf match where they're dressed in Christmas attire, or there's a swimsuit match, and you get to a point where you're like, there are so many talented women in there. And the thing is, I reflect on them now on the sense of, could you imagine what those girls could have been if they were given the fair shot, if they were given the fair stage, and they were given the fair opportunities regarding training and everything as well. Like when you listen to, I think it was Bailey and Sasha's, when they were talking about Brooklyn and how they kept things secret from when they were running through their match, because they thought if someone finds out we're doing this dive, or if someone finds out we're doing a flip or a whatever, someone might come over and tell us to not do it because we're the girls. So they kept it a secret in order to just do it, because it's quite a common turn of phrase to say it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. And I feel like eventually, with the women across all boards, be it independent promotions to the grandest stage of them all, have all sort of went, yeah, let's just do it and see if it works. Because we can ask for forgiveness and say, oh, sorry, I won't do it again. But if you do something and it sticks and it gets over with the fans, they're not going to tell you not to do that. They're going to tell you to keep on doing it. And that's why, even with the Bella twins, to sort of give divas a chance and etc., was something that needed to be done, and someone of their caliber that had got over with the fans and managed to get over with the fans at a point where things like swimsuit matches, etc., were still going on. They were the ones that had to sort of put something like that out to give the girls that were trying their best to be allowed the fair crack at the whip. And like I think about, there was somebody as well, I can't remember them talking about, somebody came out and it was like Bill DeMott said them, you're not wrestling like a diva. And that, I always remember that line sticking with me, and me being like, that's so insulting.
Yeah.
Because if someone truly wants to learn and truly wants to be able to hone their craft, then why on earth are you holding them back? Why not let them become the best they can and see if that's accepted? And if it's not, they can learn how to wrestle like a diva, how they put it, but at the same time they can also wrestle like a wrestler, because so many of them can, and so many of them, you hear their backgrounds, and there's so many girls now that you look at and think they could easily take on half the guys. And I'm not saying like, oh, sticking Alexa Bliss with Braun Strowman at WrestleMania. No, that doesn't make any sense. But there's so many girls you can look at and go, like if Shayna Baszler stepped in the ring with half of that common day, sort of the modern day roster, she could probably take them on pretty easily. Even when you think about like your Charlotte Flairs, like height-wise, she mustn't be too far off somebody like Seth Rollins. So even like physically, they're very sort of, I think they're sort of very similar in stature. So it's not a case of, oh, big man beats little girl anymore. It's there's these girls out there like a Raquel, who is easily, if not bigger than quite a lot of the male rosters. So yeah, that sort of crosses into a territory that some people get a bit upset about and annoyed at. But to me, I know I train predominantly with guys. Like I have girls there, and there are women that I've been able and quite privileged to train with. But predominantly my training has been in the ring with guys. Most of the things that I've learned has been in a ring with a guy. So the fact that I'm now not allowed to wrestle them just because it's on a show, I could go toe-to-toe with quite a lot of the people that I've stepped in the ring with in training-wise. And why can't it actually happen if it makes sense? But I think that's in general in wrestling. Wrestling needs to make sense to make it believable. So, yeah, I'm getting on a tangent here, but
No, I agree. Like when you look at the Twins, for example, who you mentioned. Look at the Bella Twins. They're going in the Hall of Fame. People say what they will. I mean, they started in the Diva search, but I look at it from a stance too. Like you were talking about the Give Divas a Chance match that they had with Paige and Emma that started the hashtag. I mean, look at it from a stance too. Like we have a lot of young girls from different avenues now. For those that don't watch wrestling and you see the Bella Twins on like Total Divas or Total Bellas, girls are like, hey, this is something that's cool. This is what they're doing. Let me see what this is about. So there's other avenues that they provided for a lot of girls to get involved and want to pursue a career in professional wrestling.
Like I 100% highly respect the fact that they took that chance, if that makes sense. Like they needed someone with their platform, with their reach to do it. Because it's all well and good that I can do that, but I don't have the reach the Bella Twins have, and that's not me attacking me. That's just realistic. That's just true. So for someone like them to go, let's try and do something not for... It benefited them, of course, as well, but it wasn't just for them. And I feel like that's a thing within the sort of female wrestlers. We might not all get on a personal level. We might be all very different individuals, but I think the reason why there's this strive and this sort of drive to not be complacent is the fact that at the end of the day, we all have the same goal, and that's to be taken seriously. No matter if you're a Bella Twin or if you're a Rhea Ripley, you all want to be taken seriously for the thing that you love and the thing that you have completely busted your arse to be even half decent at or the best at. But it's that weird where no matter how many times we cross those ropes, no matter how many times we prove ourselves, that we are able to keep up with, and we can go just as easily or harder than any of the guys can. There will always be those people that are unhappy the fact that we're even bothering to try because we're female. So we have to constantly strive to not be complacent and to support one another and push each other forward so that it helps yourself and it creates a better environment for yourself, but also creates a better environment for everyone else and for the ones coming through in the future.
Wholeheartedly. It's one of those things where you look at it from a stance like we were talking about women's wrestling here, and we're going to shoot the breeze on a lot of stuff because there's a lot of stuff to incorporate. But man, like going back to TakeOver for a second, I was watching Ember and Shotzi Blackheart, the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, against Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, coming out of Australia, another international talent that's really getting a place to shine on the NXT roster. Like you watch those two and you watch what they're doing with the NXT Women's Tag Team divisions, and we'll get to you at NXT UK in a second, but look at just how the style of how they both incorporated in the matchup and just the overall storytelling of that. You have Ember and Shotzi. Ember being a veteran of NXT, former NXT Women's Champion. This young go-hard, this badass, if you will, that is Shotzi Blackheart. Then you got Candice and Indy Hartwell giving a shine to Indy Hartwell, on the come-up, and then the veteran that's Candice LeRae. All variables really went into that tag team match, and it came out very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very... Although, obviously, Shotzi and Ember are now sort of wearing the similar gears, and Indy and Candice are obviously in the way... Mm-hmm. They're all very different. They do all have their own very different styles. Although they work well together as teams, they are all individuals in their own right. But it also gives a sort of look at the guys that have been on the independents, like Shotzi. Like I've shared shows with Shotzi in the UK where she's been on, and obviously Candice had such an incredible independent career. But the others as well, like they have grafted on an independent circuit to be taken seriously by the proper, like, hardcore, like, internet darling wrestling fans to then come onto a bigger platform and still evolve as characters. The way that Candice has completely sort of changed and evolved her style and her look from when she first come in the door as the very sort of pint-sized pixie to what she is now is incredible to see, and it's good to see that WWE, although they are hiring talent that can go and that they can stick in the ring and they can go straight away, they are still behind them in developing them and making them much richer characters so that you only look at them as their character and that they're as their performers rather than going, and here's the women. because that time's done. That's gone.
Yeah, and that's because you actually bring a great point. Because when you see Candice LeRae coming in with the Mae Young Classic, still one of the best things for the women, getting that platform with that tournament. Like, look at Rhea Ripley. She comes in with the long hair. She's smiling. Here I am. I'm Rhea Ripley in the tournament. Then you come back with a vengeance in the second one. She has that look. She has that punk look to her, and it looks great. She changed it up, and she mortified herself, and it looks great. Like, you know what I'm saying? She modified her style. She modified her look, and here we are. She's going to be taking on Asuka at WrestleMania.
Yeah, the privilege of being the fact that she was the first NXT UK women's champion. She actually, it's how much she has developed herself as her skill set as well. Like, yes, she's embraced this look to make herself stand out and look different, and she's completely evolved. She went from constantly being compared to Charlotte to never being compared to Charlotte, like, you know what I mean, look-wise. But the fact that she had the opportunity to come to the UK to train with people like Johnny Sane and alike here allowed her also to have a new edge over other individuals when she came back to NXT, because she had a chance to go and actually train with, although WWE sort of still talent in the pool with the eyes of Triple H and Shawn Michaels still very much on it. But being taught a different style, so that when that comes into normal NXT, putting quotate, but in the sort of US brand of it, she had a different flair to her than what she did previous to her being in the UK. And she's constantly evolving, and I think the idea is that there will be these different world brands means that it's no longer a conveyor belt of the same thing anymore. It's no longer just, and here's somebody else, and here's another, and they do suplex, and they do this, and everybody's got such a wide range of movesets now that matches are interesting, because you want to see, like, how could that be reversed by that individual, or she hits that, but she also can do that, so that could work well, and it just makes things exciting when things get competitive, and when things get, and not like a bad way, but like if you are constantly striving to be better and be good at your craft, then it means someone else is doing the same thing. And it's a case of you want those individuals to work together to put out this killer performance that puts both of them to a new echelon. But yeah, I feel like Rhea Ripley is one of those key players that is now going to come into the sort of the main roster fold. So we'll hopefully bring what she learned in the UK, that she brought back over to NXT in America, will now go into the fold of Raw. And yeah, I'm really hoping this match with her and Asuka will just be absolutely killer. It'll be really hard hitting, because, well, Rhea's not a small lassie, and well, Asuka, we've all seen the videos of Asuka from even our career here, but through Japan, when there's that video of her absolutely taking a tanking from Suzuki. Mm-hmm. And it's painful to watch, but at the same time, in the back of my head's going, she's tough as nails. She is hard as nails. So, yeah, it's just going to be this sort of technical mastermind, but at the same time, very sort of hard-hitting, strong match that we will at some 100%. I put money there is going to be a moment where we all go, oh, in the match, because there's going to be something that just hits just perfectly, and it's going to be an absolute stoter of something. You just go, oh, but at the same time, will just make you invest and believe in everything more, because that's the aim of the game, isn't it?
It is, and you're talking about like the style of that match. Like, I can't wait for it. There's going to be a German. There's going to be something in there. There's going to be a Riptide. There's going to be an Oskalak. There's something that's really going to make you go ooh and ah. And that's what makes a lot of the great matches that we've seen. Like, if her match with Charlotte from last year is any indication, and what Rhea Ripley has done thus far, and same with Asuka, it's going to be a stellar matchup. And like you were talking about the Japanese talent, what I love, and with NXT UK, like you're bringing in Meiko Satomura. Meiko Satomura was in the Mae Young Classic, a legend in professional wrestling. Like, she was having killer matches with Killer Kelly and Toni Storm in that Mae Young Classic. And here she is against Kaylee Ray being put on the NXT UK, the veteran that is Meiko Satomura. Like, that's great, and that adds a lot to that women's division over to the NXT UK side of things.
Yeah, and it brings a different perspective regarding learning as well. Because although the majority of the girls on NXT UK have been able to learn sort of from the British style in British schools, and have access to do seminars with individuals like Johnny Saint. Like I've had the privilege of doing sort of training seminars with him, and he still goes. Johnny Saint still gets in the ring and still wrestles with you and still teaches you so much. It's like, I always talk about seminars with him because you always learn something new. From his mind, it's just great. But bringing somebody like Miko Satomura in is just the fact that she's bringing a different aspect. She's bringing, like, even like back in the day, sort of the exchange of talent. Like, there's the amount of stories of like Japanese wrestlers coming to the UK and UK wrestlers going to Japan, because although the styles are very different, there's sort of the same level of respect shown to it. Like, it's still wrestling at the end of the day. It's still a combat sort of performance that you're putting on, and that's very much sort of weaved into the sort of style of wrestling in the UK and in Japan. So it's always very, very well and complemented one another. And the fact that like individuals like Miko Satomura has come over and has worked with Kaylee Ray, and previously to our signing to NXT UK, there's actually Miko and Kaylee faced up in Pro Wrestling Eve in London at Wrestle Queendom. And that was the first time their matchup. It's on YouTube. If you want to see it, it's on YouTube and available to watch. It's incredible. But that was the first time Miko Satomura had ever been pinned in the UK. So the fact that she has that level of respect for someone like Kaylee Ray is both humbling and incredible to see, because she clearly respects the British style to a high regard, to be able to come here so many times and face so many opponents. Like, she's faced, like, Pete Dunne is an example of someone who booked Miko Satomura for a promotion he was helping with when he was still in independence, purely because he wanted to wrestle her. Like, he was like, she is the best. She's one of the best in the world. It has nothing to do with her gender. I want to wrestle her. So he booked her to wrestle her, because he was like, I want to learn from her. I want to just be in the ring with someone of that caliber. So yeah, like, it's incredible that she's come to the UK and to come to NXT, because it's only good things that are going to come from it, and it's only going to bring the talent up with her, because that just seems to be her mentality as a performer and as a female in wrestling.
Agreed 100%. It's funny, like, we're talking also about Kaylee Ray too. Like, the first time I remember seeing Kaylee Ray, because my friend Rob is a big ICW fan, and he was telling me about this Queen of Insanity match. I'm talking about Fear and Loathing with Kaylee Ray and Viper. Piper. And my God, like, the bout and just everything, the intensity and just the overall brutality of that match. And I remember first seeing Kaylee Ray in the Mae Young Classic, and I think she was eliminated first round. And I'm like, God dang, man, she's good. And then we see her in NXT UK, becomes women's champ, beating Toni Storm, one of the longest reigning, if not the longest reigning NXT women's champions. And it's just like, man, like, every time that we see her each and every time in the ring for NXT UK, such a prominent role. And I'll be honest with you right now, I love me some Kaylee Ray. Put more Kaylee Ray on my television.
Always. I mean, she's an incredible talent. I very much have the privilege of calling her friend, and being able to train with her is, she'll never understand how much I appreciate it, or as an honor, but because she's so humbling as well, she's just constantly just striving to make things better. I mean, you talk about that Queen and Insanity match. I was one of the people backstage picking out thumbtacks out their backs. I was there. I was very close to it all. But yeah, she's an incredible talent. She is an incredible sort of coach. She's always sort of striving and coaching to bring people up. It's never a case of, well, I'm Kaylee Ray and I'm better than, like, she's always just, she knows she's good. She's aware of her talents. But at the same time, it's very, you can't escape that. That's just how it is. But she's always someone who just wants everybody else to come up with her. It's not a case of I'm here and use just be there. Like, it's a case of she wants to bring everybody up, because then it brings her up at the same time. Like, she learns from that. But the fact that she is the only person that's above her is Moolah, but she is the longest reigning women's champion in WWE in the past 35 years, I believe it is.
Yep.
Could be going for 36 years. But to me, she's just, it's going to be, like, it's the same thing with all of, I feel like, the NXT UK titles, is that there is a prestige about them now, and it is a case of, it will be a big deal when someone drops a title. It isn't just they've got them, okay, then it goes to this person, and then it goes to that. It now is a case of people want to see who's going to beat Walter. People are going to want to see who's going to beat Kaylee Ray. I mean, obviously, Dallas just lost the tag titles like a month or so ago to Pretty Deadly. But when that happened, like, Twitter was a case of like, wait, what? Like, who? Wait, not what? Pretty Deadly? Like, but it was a case of, it was a big deal because so far they are the longest reigning in the company across the board, heavyweight, female, and tag. That they have completely surpassed some humongous names. But it just makes it a bit more, to me, it's like the IWGP like title has only been changed like has only been changed. Is it something like it's only been changed like 8 or like 10 times in the last 10 years or something like that? So it's because it's like the shortest.
Yeah, it's like the lineage and the history. We see Okada win it, or we have him retain it. There's been so many title retentions that it's so hard to see like a title defense. So yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it's maddening. So it's that case of like, it has that prestige about it that now that I hope it still continues, because it should be a big deal when someone wins and loses a title, and it shouldn't be as easy as just, right, you have it, right, okay, now you beat, like, a champion should be that. A champion should be the best. The person holding the title should be the best. And then people need to then strive and work to beat that individual, because that's how it works in sport. You know what I mean? Like, but no, like, Kaylee is just, she's incredible. She's got an incredible mind. She's got an incredible foresight as well of how things are going to go, which I don't think people talk about enough, about her foresight in wrestling. But yeah, like, the fact that individuals like your Sashas and your Baileys have actively said, I want to wrestle her, just shows how much they've strived and probably watched in order to get to where they are. That now when your individuals like Kaylee and Miko are coming in, it's allowing those that are on the big stage to probably wrestle the individuals that inspired them when they were just starting out. And the fact that those individuals are now starting to get the recognition they deserve is even better.
I think for me, too, I look at it from a stance here, like when Kaylee Ray came over here and she was a part of the War Games for NXT TakeOver, I was just like, all right, because you have Shayna and Kaylee Ray, you have the NXT Women's Champion and the NXT UK Women's Champion on the same team, and she added a lot to that match because she got a chance to shine, and I personally love that because, like you were talking about, Sasha and Bayley want to wrestle her. You bring her into NXT, I could see her having so many great matches on here in the forefront with the likes of, you know, Io Shirai, what have you. Like, bring her here, bring her in the UK. Like, there's so much, like you said, her foresight, her technical prowess, her overall psychology that she brings. Like, another one I remember seeing her go against was Casey Owens. We're talking about Evil. Like, that is just some of the stuff that really sticks out in my mind when you see Kaylee Ray just go in and apply her craft.
Yeah, like, she's always... I can talk about, like, it's that weird sort of thing. Like, there's so much to her that she always brings out the best in the individual she's in with. She, as I was saying, she's very confident in her abilities. She knows what she's good at, and she knows that she is good, which isn't. Some people sort of recoil when they think about the positives in themselves. But she is incredible at what she does. But the fact that whoever she's in the ring with, she elevates, and she always pushes them to be better, which is what is needed. The people that are the leaders and the ones that are going to make things interesting and better are the ones that push to make others better. And that's Kaylee right out of the bag. Like, her in War Games was so, we were all so proud of her watching it. And the fact that she is unexcusably Scottish. Like, she doesn't try and hide the fact that she slows down, obviously, what she's saying, because I'm having to do that even just now, because we understand that some individuals might not understand the accent, but she is always true to herself completely. Like, and she is unexcusably her. But she will always strive to be better. She will strive to make everybody else better. And putting her in something like War Games, she is a daredevil. She is. The amount of times being on shows and she's like, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, what? Okay. The shot she takes when she sort of comes in from the right, from the top, and just takes that, what we would call a bin, but you would call a trash can, Rhea oh, Jesus. I thought my friend had died. I was just like, oh, that's it. Kaylee's dead. But she has no fear. But I feel like there's times in the world you need the fearless to be the ones that lead the charge. And she is very much that. And she's very much that, not just for female wrestlers, but as I was saying before, like, for so long when I watch it, although Beth Phoenix, physically I felt some form of sort of connection with, there was no voice for me. There was nobody that sounded like me. There was nobody from where they came from, especially the women. They were all American, Canadian, and then you'd occasionally get someone like a Maurice who was French, or you know what I mean? But there was nobody Scottish, and there hadn't been anybody Scottish. But now you've got someone like Kaylee, who could be that Scottish voice. You've got Kaylee, you've got Piper Niven, you've got Nikki Cross as well. Like, those are now the voice for me, and the voice for even British kids and sort of European kids, because, well, if she can go and she's from Johnston in Scotland, which is in comparison to the States, that's ministry, which is probably some small housing scheme in America kind of thing. It's not a big place, but she's very proud of where she come from. It gives that inspiration of, like, we don't need to be American to make it. And she's very much one of the people at the forefront of that.
I'm going to say this, speaking from the American side of things, like, what I love about the international talent, people like yourself, and we'll get to ICW Fight Club in a sec here, but what I also love about it too is for those that are new to the independent scene and the professional wrestling scene in the United Kingdom and all around, what I love about it too is what WWE does is we have the library, and this is where it comes into NXT UK. When you see the building of feuds, like look at Walter and Ilya Dragunov, for example, we have the ICW library, we got the Progress library, we got the WXW library. Like, I love how they incorporate that when each and every bout and how we're building to set feuds on various takeovers. Like, everything is so accessible to us, and I just love the fact that we incorporate that library because it shows the history, and that's one of the elements that really goes into what we see within the UK brand.
Yeah, like 100%. Like, the fact that so many of these individuals have, like, it's that weird sort of thing. There's so many that have crossed paths before, and there are also so many that have never crossed paths, and you're baffled to why. So yeah, it's great having sort of this independent circuit, but it also means that there are those that have been signed to NXT and NXT UK and now sort of predominantly only wrestle for them. But it means that now there's this interesting, I like to, like, within friends, I like to say, like, the independent section now of the WWE network is essentially the farmer's market of wrestling. Like, it's the place where everybody can now go, every promotion, be it a small town hall, or be it the NXT, go and look in companies like AEW, and everybody can now go look at the WWE network, look at the independents, and see, right, the people that are on these shows are essentially the best in the independent market now. Although there are others and there are sort of things, these are the place where you can go and look and go, well, I like her, I like him, I think they could work for this, etc. So it's the place where people can essentially go and pick and choose from them, if that makes sense. Like I jokingly say, like I'm this big heel and coo now that people with the long sort of the big ginger hair can come and grab me by the horns and take me to their promotion. But it does mean that I also have this place where I can direct traffic as well and go, if you want to see my work, I'm on the WWE network. And it's mental to think about at the same time for myself, especially with the fact that it's on things like in America, like Peacock. Mm-hmm. And someone told me that Peacock is in 34 million homes in the state or something like that. Which,
very popular. Yep.
Yeah, which is essentially roughly nearly 7 times the population of the country that I live in and I am from and very proud of. But the fact that that's a thing is insane. Like, pardon the pun, but being it with ICW and the same Championship Wrestling, but it's that sort of, I'm from a small town called Kirkcaldy in Scotland, and I'm now on the WWE network working for a promotion in Glasgow, which isn't too far from where I'm initially from, but I work for a promotion in Glasgow, but it gets put on a network that's broadcast worldwide, where people that I will never meet, never speak to, know my name, know my face, and know what I do. It's bad, but it is also the dream. Like it's of course I would like to work for bigger promotions and get on a bigger stage, but it's also a massive milestone in the promotional sense, because it now means that it's no longer just the dream to go to America. For so long, the idea was, if you want to make it in wrestling, you need to eventually just go to America, or you can go to Japan if you want to sort of tackle that market instead. But if you want to be big in the sort of the Western side of the world, you need to go to America, which is still a case, and I still very much want to work in America. But the fact that I can get my name out there and be seen and be noticed in Glasgow because of how hard sort of the talent strive and work, and the sort of the promotion as well have strived. And I've been there from the grassroots of this promotion to being part of the roster of this promotion. It's like a story. It's like a storybook somehow, but it's incredible, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
That's what I was about to say. I mean, you really should be, because your hard work is definitely paying off. I also look at it from a stance too. You know, we got a lot of bad things with the WWE Network, ICW being one of them. Like Mark Dallas, like I remember seeing, and they actually just put it on their YouTube. Rob Van Dam, WWE Hall of Famer, has appeared on ICW. Drew McIntyre, Triple H. We've seen a lot of talent go through ICW, and just shows the prominence and the rich history of ICW and the talents that have come through, and the talents like yourself that are there. And Mark Dallas just being absolutely amazing what he does with his craft. But I also look at it from a stance too, man. We got ICW Fight Club on the WWE Network. We got NXT UK on the WWE Network. And I got to say this about your husband. When I first saw Wolfgang in the NXT UK tournament, I got to say, my God, this dude, he's big, he's tough, he's brutal, and I got to say probably one of the prettiest swantons besides Jeff O'Hare that I've ever seen. No, I'll be honest with you. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, snap, because here in the States, like Jeff Hardy, you think Swanton Bomb, but a lot of people don't realize, like when you look at God Rest His Soul, Sean O'Hare, when he did that Swanton Bomb with a dude that's his tall and his stature, it's amazing. But yeah, looking at Wolfgang and Gallus, Mark and Joe Coffey, like looking at you two, like look at what you do on ICW Fight Club, him, NXT Tag Champ, you're working with the likes of, my goodness gracious, Mustache Mountain. I'm talking about Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster. Like these are synonymous matches within that tag team division.
Yeah, it's baffling as well on the side of most of these guys that I've sort of worked with before any of this came about, when we were just striving to make the British scene better. And that's where it's all come from. It's come from us striving to actually reignite the love in the British scene as a whole, just for in the country. But because of the hard work and dedication of it all, it got the attention of the bigwigs. It got the attention of New York. Like, and it was you couldn't ignore it anymore. To go from, I think ICW pulled the biggest European show that had happened, and it was something strange since like the 70s or something, which had Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks on it. It was some mad, but it blew the numbers out the water kind of thing, for an independent show. But it was all on the backbone of homegrown talent, which was a major thing. And the imports wanted to come because they wanted to learn. They wanted to be part of this new sort of bubbling scene that was coming up from really just the bootstrings of everybody that was on the shows, and how everybody's developed over time, and how much people have strived to be part of that. Like, you've got people like even Sugar Dunkerton, like moving, I think he's from Georgia originally. I might be wrong, so sorry, Sugar, if I'm wrong. But he coming from there to move to Leeds in the UK so he can learn and hone his craft here, to then go back. And he ended up on AEW as Pineapple Pete and things like that. But it came from going, that's where it's getting interesting. It stopped being, because for so long, the British scene was sort of all-stars, that you'd see camps, and there was independent shows, but it just, although all the talent was incredible, there wasn't this sort of buzz. There wasn't something new, and there hadn't been something new for a while. It's sort of been the heyday of like your World of Sports and things like that, with your Johnny Saints and your Big Daddies and your Giant Haystacks and your Pat Roaches and your Jim Breaks, but there was this sort of lineage that had been there, and this respect that had been there, but it sort of fizzled out by the end of like the late 80s or early 90s, and it hadn't been on television for a long time and stuff like that. But there was also this sort of boom of shock television for the Attitude Era and stuff, and then that started to fizzle out. But that's sort of where ICW came from, because like Mark Dallas, there's a promo, and it's terribly shot. I'll give him that. It's sort of one of those, the mobile phone is sort of just under the chin, and it was sort of before we knew how to hold and properly sort of do self-recording. When he talks about how it felt like there was no entertainment for him anymore. There was nothing for him. Like, he was from an era where he loved the Attitude Era for its shock value, and your Jackass era and your Jerry Springers and things like that. But that was no longer there for him. Like, the adults had grown up and were expected to grow up and not to be the way they'd been, and to enjoy the things they enjoy. They needed to enjoy a more mature product, where he just didn't want that, and he wanted to create, and he ended up creating ICW because he wanted to do something that was a bit more shocking and daring and a bit out there, because it hadn't really happened in the UK for a bit. And it sort of family shows that you'd go to, and it was all above board, and nobody cursed, and nobody had any weapons, and nobody had anything a bit more risky, let's say. But ICW was sort of born, and that's where you'd get things like a death match, or just even a hardcore match, or a tables match, or a chairs, things that we were all accustomed to because of what we'd watched in our youth, but had sort of disappeared because it was no longer accepted. Where Dallas sort of felt like, well, I still enjoy it, so if I still enjoy it, there must be others that enjoy this too. I can't be alone in this. And ICW was born, which then gave, which at that time was sort of a city like Glasgow, the opportunity to bring the wrestling schools that had been there, that were prestigious, had created incredible talents. Like, if I was here all day to just list off the talents that both at that point PW and Source had sort of created, it gave them a chance to work together, because for so long it was a case of this schoolwork, these shows, and that schoolwork, them shows. And there was very rare the opportunity for them to intertwine, where ICW sort of came along, and although it was the daring and risky, it was kind of the Switzerland of the Scottish scene, because it meant everybody sort of went there and everybody worked each other. There wasn't a case of like, you don't work that person because they're from this school anymore. It was very much a case of, no, that mentality needs to go out the window, because if we stick with that mentality, it's never going to progress. It's never going to get bigger. It's never going to get better. So obviously we had ICW that built up and built up. And then I remember I was friends. Weirdly, I became friends with Jim Smallman, who's now a NXT producer especially for NXT UK. And he's one of the founding fathers of Progress. And him I started working at ICW, sort of production side of things, and sort of backstage, and saying like, this is great. It's like ECW, but with a Scottish accent. It's just a bit mad and a bit mental, and how excited I was to be part of it, where all the talent, and like at that point, the talent was Wolfgang, Kaylee Ray, Noam Dar, like I literally could go on and on and on. Basically, anybody that's Scottish on NXT UK have worked in ICW pretty much. The majority of people have worked in ICW at some point. There's so many talent in there that work. Like Sha Samuels, for example, is a mainstay in ICW, and he's from London, and it's a bizarre sort of thing watching Sha now, because he is doing exactly what he's always done in Scotland and is beloved, and I mean beloved for what he does. But in NXT UK, he's hated and he's never changed. And it's, to me, that's also like a sort of viewpoint of an incredible performer, because the best in the world are always themselves, and it's either the case of they are working for the man or against the man, and that's why you love or hate them. And Shah's sort of the viewpoint of that. He is Sha Samuels, undeniably, but he's now hated down south but beloved up the north. It's weird. But yeah, it's the fact that somebody as well, like your Drew McIntyres, who was the first ICW champion as well, when he was released initially, he sort of talks about, he does talk to us about this, where when he was released initially, he was just inundated with people sending him messages asking, hey guy, I'd like to book you for this, blah, blah. And he sort of was trying to get himself together, and the one person that didn't message him was Dallas. Mm-hmm. When you ask Dallas, in Dallas's mind, he was of the case of, I'm giving my mate some space. He needs space. He's just lost his job. He's just lost the dream job that he dedicated his life to getting. I'm going to give him a bit of space. But in Drew's mind, he was like, hey, why is he not messaging me? But he then came up with his game plan of what he wanted to do. He wanted to strive to be the best professional independent wrestler there was on the planet. And he was going to start that at ICW, because he knew it was this buzzing, growing sort of scene and promotion. And he wanted to be the guy that could be the new catalyst to even bring it even further up and bring everybody else up with him, because he's of that mentality as well. I think it might be a Scottish thing, where you want to bring everybody else up with you. If you've got success, you go back and you get everybody else and you try and drag them up with you.
And I love that mentality. And what's great about it, too, is like you were talking about Drew McIntyre in that documentary where Mark Dallas didn't contact him. Here he comes. He's making his mark in ICW. He's going all around the indies. I think that's very smart of him, because like where he was in a bad place. And then here we go. We're doing a thing on the indies. And then here we go. We're over here in TNA. We're back here in WWE. We're in NXT. We're back on the main roster. Like his journey to where he is, and I'm going to say this right now, like last year when he beat Brock Lesnar, unfortunately during the circumstances and everything with the COVID, not in front of a live audience. But now here we are. It's him and Bobby Lashley, two guys that have been striving for years and years and years to encompass what we have in that main event of WrestleMania. That's just a story that writes itself.
Mm-hmm. Like he's so inspirational. He's so there for everybody else as well as himself. Like, it's not just about him. And having sort of the pleasure of working with him. Like, I always say, like, people have asked, like, oh, you've got a good clothesline. I go, yeah. Like, Drew taught me that. Like, Drew is one of those guys that if you asked him, hey, like, I'm struggling with this, or he'd instantly be there. He'd help you with anything, with no question. If you want to strive and be better, he was there for it. And I often talk about it. I say, like, yeah, I learned how to do a clothesline because Drew hit me 3 times with his, and I got it. I was just like, right, great, okay, let's go, Drew. But he's just one of those guys. He just wants everybody to be better and wants everybody to come up with him. And there's a point, it's quite funny, sort of in ICW, everybody that worked with Drew, we've all sort of got our impression of Drew. And it's always the word, like, I'm so tired. Because for so long, he just traveled the world. I mean, there was one week where he was with us in the Sunday in Glasgow, and he essentially traveled the world to come back to us the following Sunday. Like, we had shows a week apart. And he sort of, within that time, he sort of, it was some place in mainland Europe, 2 places in mainland Europe. He then went to Australia. He then came back, wrestled Matt Hardy. I remember he wrestled Matt Hardy in New York, and then he flew in to wrestle for us in Glasgow. He literally did a circle of the world to come back to us. But for him, that's what he had to do. He wanted to be the #1 independent wrestler in the world. So he did it, and he did everything he can. And he also, within that time, took the platform, which is ICW, and made their heavyweight championship a world heavyweight championship. And so did the girls. So did Kaylee, and so did Viper. And that's one of those, it's a weird bugbear of mine, and I've said this to a few, and I've actively said this, is that one of the things in independent wrestling that really just, those little things that get your goat and you just go, and to you, it really annoys you, but it might not mean anything. When promotions call their championships world titles and they haven't left like a 5-mile radius of their promotion, it drives me insane, because I know how much work, how much graft, how much determination, how much miles were taken to make the ICW World Heavyweight Championship and the ICW World Women's Championship took to make them world titles. Like, and I don't know if it's the same rules in America or the same, but I know in the UK, what I was taught was a world championship when it had been defined in at least 5 countries and 3 continents. Those were the requirements to call it a world championship. And I don't know if it's the same in America, so some people might come and go, oh no, it's different here, but here, those were the rules. So I know with Drew took it, obviously did it in Europe, did it in multiple, like Europe's easy, that the countries were easy if you're in Europe to knock off, because you can get a sort of a reasonably cheap flight to go here, there, and wherever. But the other places were, he did it in Australia, and he did it in America. So those were the 3 continents. I know with the women's title, Kaylee took it to Japan with her, and Viper took it to America with her. So they knocked off the continents, and we were in Europe, and we'd done many different countries, but we knew the continents was the hard aspect of it. The countries for us was quite easy, but the continents were the difficult. But the fact that that was a thing that was dedicated, we don't call the 0G Championship in ICW the World 0G Championship, because it's not being defended around the world. The tag titles are not world titles because they've not been defended around the world. And we are very sort of protective of that. We don't call them world titles because they're not. These are the world titles. So when the amount of people just throw in the word, yeah, I've got this, and it's our world, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's not left anywhere. It's not left your state. It's not left your hometown. It is not a world title. to call it a world title is a prestigious thing, is a hard working graft and dedication goes into calling a title a world title. And if you truly love this business, if you truly respect the performers and the dedication it takes to work in this business, you respect that element and you do not call your boxing belt you bought from a shop down the street a world title until it's traveled the world.
I think what I also can compare, look back in the 80s when Ric Flair would go over to Japan and defend the N.W.A title, or he would go to Puerto Rico and defend against like Carlos Colon, right? Like what Ring of Honor did that when Adam Cole was the champion, him and Kyle O'Reilly. They were fighting on a New Japan show. You have Kurt Angle from TNA go over and defend against Yuji Nagata. Like those are prime examples of that. So I can understand that because like that's just old school. It's very territory days here in the States, but it's like it's very old school and it really showcases, like you said, the privilege, the prestige of the overall title. So yeah, that's what I could compare it to.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Like there are titles that are world titles, and they are world titles for a reason because they have been defended around the world. They are respected around the world. But if they've not been defended around the world, it's not a world title. Don't just think because WWE call theirs a world title that you can call yours. It's not the same thing. Yes, WWE is this giant mega force in the wrestling industry and can easily take their titles around the world, but it still is a graft and it still reflects on the days, as you're saying, of Ric Flair with the N.W.A title, with Kurt Angle with TNA's title. Like there's so many people who are the wrestling echelons, you know what I mean? They are the pinnacle of what professional is now. They grafted to make those titles world titles, so respect that. Truly respect that. And if you have a title that you want to make it a world title, you need to do just as much graft as they did back then to make that a world title. And there's promotions that I work for and I work with closely, and they understand that when I've said to them, like, that's not a world title. And they go, what? And I go, where's it been defended? And they know that I'm saying that because I want to be part of the company that strives to make their titles world titles, that wants to bring their promotion and make their audience bigger to a world because it's great for not only the performers but for themselves. But yeah, it's a little bugbear of mine that I have, and I have actively said it quite a lot. But I feel like it's one of those things that also wrestling fans sometimes don't realise that that's actually a thing. If they're more sort of your common wrestling, like not common wrestling, but not your hardcore dedicated, knows every rule under the sun and understands what everything's going on, but just enjoys it, don't understand that that's a thing, that there is rules and things in place to be able to officially call your title a world title. So I like to bring it up on podcast to be like, hey, if you don't know this is what a world title means. If your company says there's a world title, ask where it was defended, because it shouldn't be just a thing that people can just slapdash on something that should be respected.
And as you just put it, you just kind of put the thing like, oh, they're just enjoying it for what it is, and then you know the rule. That's the difference between a casual fan and the hardcore wrestling fans that actually know about the business, look at the rules, look at everything that goes into it. So that's what I also love about it too, is because it's very instilled in you, like, this is what I want to do, and that just shows your overall discipline. And this is where I also ask you now, because we were talking about ICW Fight Club and everything that's encompassed with the ICW brand and everything that's encompassed with the network. Like, I'll be honest with you, I've seen a lot of your matches, and some of the badass matches I've seen with yours. I've seen yours against Little Miss Roxy. I've seen a lot of stuff with Angel Hayes. Like, you have, I'm just going to say it right now, some of the best chemistry, some of the best grit and determination, some of the best physicality I've seen. And I got to tell you, with the utmost sincere respect, I really enjoyed those series of matches that you've had.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I hope that my dedication and my hard work show through. My main aspect is I, much like the ones previous to me, know that it's not just about me, and that I want to be very much believable and be very much confident in what I can do, but at the same time help others around me to bring their game up, because the better everybody else is, the better I'll become, which sounds selfish, but at the same time it's not. Because, of course, I want to strive to better myself, to better my abilities, to better the scene around me. I also, part of that scene is everybody else in it. So yeah, I've been very lucky to work with some incredible talent. I'm very lucky to train with some mind-blowing talent who have always been there to tell me when I'm doing things wrong, as well as doing things right. Because although sometimes hearing the good things is great, sometimes the best thing to hear is the negative so that you can get better and sort of learn from that. One of the main aspects of wrestling is learning. And as soon as you stop learning, then you're done. Like, that's when you need to get out of the game, because there is so much to wrestling that you can constantly learn. And yeah, that's one of the main things. But yeah, thank you very much for the kind words. And I hope that I just keep surprising you by getting better.
Oh no, you're very welcome. Checking out ICWFH and the beauty of YouTube and checking out a lot of the great matches that we've seen from you in various promotions. Like I remember, like as a kid, like talking with my friends about professional wrestling. They would ask me, you know, the common question, "Who's your favorite wrestler?" And I said, "Personally, I can't pick one. I think I like all of them." And the reason why I say all of them because I'm like, it takes two to tango when it comes to a match. You know what I'm saying? The believability and everything that goes into the matchup and the overall selling, because it's what we're doing. I remember Triple H was telling them on Tough Enough back in 2001, the first season. He's like, "This is what we do. We tell our stories with our bodies. It's what it is." And like, and he's very true. And now look and see what Triple H is doing with NXT and Shawn Michaels is doing with NXT UK. Like, you have so many people to learn from. Like you were talking about Drew. Like, look at the ambassadors that you have. You have William Regal. You have Johnny Saint. You got Nigel effing Mcginnis over there on commentary. It's Nigel Mcginnis. Like, it's so amazing just to see the learning trees that you have right there.
Did you also know Nigel Mcginnis is part of like the Magic Circle? Like, he's an incredible magician.
Yes, I have seen.
Like, he does these, after shows, he's always got a pack of cards and he's just pick a card and you're like, "No, Nigel, you scare me." But yeah, they're incredible, like all of them, but they're all they're what I like to call, which is it's a phrase with friends of mine. So a da here in Scotland is a dad, like it's a father figure kind of thing. But you could be a father, you could be a dad. But if you're a da, then it means you're sort of the best at something. But to be a wrestling da is someone who takes their abilities, their sort of things that make them great, and use them to bring others up. It's not just they know their abilities and they could just coast on them all day and they'd still be revered as the greatest in the world. But instead of just coasting on that, they take sort of their position, their viewpoint, and their how people else see them in wrestling, and bring others up with them, and bring the people that have just walked in the door or have only been doing this for a couple of years, and hone them to be better and to believe in themselves. And that's what every single person you've said, from Triple H to William Regal to Johnny Saint to Shawn Michaels to all of those, have all done to sort of bring up this new generation of wrestler to be confident and to be role models for the ones coming through in the future. But yeah, it's a really exciting time, and they are some of the forefathers to make it as exciting as it is.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And I'll just go back to that Magic Circle that you said. If you guys want to see the Nigel Mcginnis documentary, which was so well done on the network, watch him and Isla Dawn in the backstage area and just watch Isla Dawn freak when he's doing the card tricks and everything with the magic. It's hilarious.
He's incredible. He does it. And I remember the last time I seen Nigel was at the last Blackpool takeover, obviously before everything sort of went on fire with the virus. But after the show, yeah, he was sort of just sitting in the hotel sort of bar area, getting something to eat, and just he had a pack of cards and he was just doing tricks for everybody. And there would just be this corner of this sort of bar where everybody's just like, "Whoa!" And it was obviously, you're like, Nigel's over there just doing tricks. But he's also someone who has all the time in the world for everybody else. Like, he knows, he's went and he's learned his craft. He's learned from some of the best minds there was in his time, and he brings that to other individuals. Like, I even know when I was starting out, I did a seminar with Nigel, and there were sort of things that I was scared to do, but I always just assumed I needed to do them, kind of thing, because that was part of wrestling. And talking to him and him sort of going, "Well, how about you do this instead? How about that? How about..." And I was like, oh, okay. And he's just got this sort of mind, and the little girl that was like, I didn't feel like the wrestler at the time that was just like, hi, Mr. Mcginnis. The time he took with me, because I asked the question, he 100% was like, I will take the time with you to teach you something new, which he didn't have to, because it was seemed like such a strange question, but he's got such a great mind, and all of them have such great patience and truly want and love this sort of sport, that they want to help others and make others better, and it's not just about themselves and how they look. They truly want the people coming up to outshine them, which is mad to think, but they truly do. They want to make the next them and the next bigger than them as well. And they clearly love every second of it. When you meet any of these men, and when they talk about the work they're doing, they're so passionate, they're so in love with everything they're doing, and they're so proud of everybody. Like when you hear Michaels talk about everybody else, it's like he's talking about his own children, and that's essentially what they are. They are the wrestling children. They are the people that they're just looking after and trying to better constantly above themselves. And it's quite beautiful and quite heartwarming when you hear them talk about everybody else, because they want to talk about everybody else. They're so proud of everybody else. And that's both NXT UK and NXT as a whole.
It kind of reminds me of comparison. So growing up on New York, there was a very prominent promotion called the NYWC New York Wrestling Connection. Now, for those that are unaware of the New York Wrestling Connection, guys like Tony Nese, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins came from there. Bull James, Matt Stryker, so many people came from this promotion. There's a wrestler named by the name of Superstar Dickie Rods. Now, Dickie Rods had been wrestling for 20 years. I remember seeing an interview recently with him, and he's talking about, man, I wrestled Tony Nese, I wrestled Trent Beretta, who was Plasma there, and all these guys that have gone on to greater pastures. And he's like, I just look back at it and I smile, because I got the chance to be a part of these guys with training and just going on to see them go into the future and have their success that they've had. It makes me smile because I was a part of that. Like, that's the type of stuff that I get from like Nigel and stuff. You're like, I'm just happy to be a part of this and help these talents out, and it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Like, it is. I think the best coaches in the world are the people that when you talk to their students, do see them like father or mother figures, because they want to look after them. They will be like, and I even say that from the training that I've had, like work at GPWA, my coaches. Weirdly, one of them became my husband, but your Wolfgangs, your BT Guns, your Steve, so the 5 initial coaches were Wolfgang, BT Gun, Red Lightning, Jack Jester, and the now passed Lionheart. They then brought in people like Kaylee Ray, like Stevie Boy, Jackie Polo, Liam Thompson, to just name a few that have come through the door. But it's that case of everybody sort of, there's like a love as well. It's like a family love where when you're doing something wrong and you're doing something dangerous, they're there to be like, stop that. And we'll go, you need to stop that. This is out of order. Stop doing that. This isn't right. But at the same time, they are there to hone and teach and care for at the end of the day. And they want everybody to be good. They want everybody to live their dream of when we were kids, and when I was stone cold stunnering my brother and he was hitting rock bottoms on me. But that's now the that's now the job. I don't do it on my brother, sadly, but it's a case of they understand that everybody that walks through those doors had the exact same dreams and mentalities they did when they were their age and at their point in their career, and they just want to be able to give them the help that maybe they never got, but they now can provide. It's a new world, it's a new approach to everything as well. And they're now teaching people the way that I think, and I know this from obviously my partner and things like that, talking about the way that they would have loved to have been taught, how the way that they would have loved to have learned. They're now doing that. They're now putting it into practice and seeing some incredible results.
Now, I'm going to say this first and foremost. I went the opposite route. I didn't do stunners or rock bottoms, but I did do a mad Shane McMahon coast to coast elbow drop when I was a kid, so I can relate to that. Absolutely. You made me laugh when you were talking about stunners and rock bottoms to your brother. We've all done it as kids, you know.
100%. Oh, my brother was obsessed with The Rock to a point where when my brother left our family home, he had a poster on the back of his door that had never come off his door since he was like 3. And it was when the poster came off, you could see the colour difference of like years of like the paint. Still, like my brother has actively said to me that the reason why he fully supports my choice to be a professional wrestler is one day he will meet Dwayne Johnson because of me. Cool, like okay, like still enamored with him, but at the same time, when you think about it, that's a pretty good role model to have. Like he's done pretty good for himself. And there's so many people that you go, they're great role models, and now people are now striving to become the role models that they looked up to. So yeah, because he was The Rock, I obviously was like, well, I'm Stone Cold, and he took many a stunner, and I took, although he was so much smaller than me, so I'd have to like crouch down to get put in the rock bottom, but would like jump up, and it was great. It was just the thing that we truly bonded over. But weirdly, I'm the one that became the wrestler and not him.
Well, hey, he gets to see his sister do amazing things in the professional wrestling world and just have that overall love and admiration for her sibling. And I also look at it from a stance, too. Like you were talking about ICW being kind of like the ECW. And what I love about that is, too, ECW had a little bit of everything. Like right over here, we got Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko. Technical, just absolutely amazing stuff. Mm-hmm. You have the crazy matches, the barbed wire matches. You have the ECW title matches. It's like, look at ICW. You have these crazy matches, the Queen of Insanity. Like over here, we'll have some comedy. Here's Joe Hendry talking about Grado stole his lunch, or boom, 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 Jack Jester's in my room. Like there's so many things that are encompassed, and I love that. Yeah, I mean, I always think ICW is like a box of chocolates where there's going to be something in it you like. Like it's not, there's going to be things that are maybe not your cup of tea, but there will then be something that you love. Like there was like, I remember there was a point in time where we were hyping some there was like a casket match getting hyped. There was some mad 4-way death match thing happening. And then at the same time, there was like a best of 5 series between Joe Coffey and Noam Dar. Yeah. And it was so technical. And so the people that loved that were just like, okay, that's what I watch. That's what I take. I come to see that. And then there's a cage match going on that has BT Gunn and Wolfgang in it. And then you've got a barbed wire ropes match with Drew McIntyre or Drew Galloway and Jack Jester, and it's just a bit of insanity. But then you have like Joe Coffey coming out and doing a parody for Phil Collins with somebody dressed as a gorilla, and then you've got Grado with everybody singing Like a Prayer, like it's the last thing they'll do on earth. But yeah, everything's there for you. If you're looking for something, if you're looking for some form of entertainment, you'll find something you like. You might not like everything, but there'll be something that you enjoy. Agreed. That was like going to Ring of Honor on Long Island at Sports Plus, which was like an arcade downstairs, and then you had the venue up top. What was cool about it is, too, like you go on a Ring of Honor show, you'll see like Homicide and Colt Cabana brawling. You'll see Jay Lethal and Low-Key going at it, and then you'll see like these scramble matches in pure wrestling. Like I remember seeing Claudio Castagnoli, Cesaro, against Milano Collection AT, who's done his thing many of times in Japan, and then here's Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan just main evented with like Christopher Daniels or whatever, and it's amazing, and that's the great variety that we get. And I'm going to say this right now, I do have a couple final questions, and Molly Spartan, I'm going to put the overture out here to you. Anytime you want to come back on the show, you're more than welcome. I really enjoyed talking wrestling and just shooting the breeze with you today. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, of course, like wrestling is very easy to talk about when you actually love it. So exactly. I'm more than happy to come on and talk about whatever wrestling-wise. But yeah, no, I'd love to come back on. Maybe I could come back on with my tag partner, Casey Owens. Absolutely. Obviously, we form the She-Wolves. So yeah, we'd love to come back on and talk about wrestling, because it's the one subject that I know I can constantly talk about and not sort of get bored with. I will say before I get to my question, you mentioned Casey Owens. I've seen you two together in the matches with Casey Owens. Like, we could be here all day, but I'm going to say, if you guys have not seen Casey Owens with ICW or on NXT UK, she's had some badass matches on NXT UK. Like, that's another one who I just love seeing. I love seeing her progression, and I love seeing your progression. It's one of those things where you have a badass women's division, you have badass women in general, and you two encompass that. So I definitely would love to have Casey as well. So much love and respect to you both. But one thing I got to ask you, man, we got WrestleMania these next 2 nights coming up. I got to ask you, night 2, every card is going to be great. Every top to bottom match has a story. But I got to ask you, first and foremost, triple threat match, Roman Reigns, Edge, Daniel Bryan. Who you got?
I have to say Edge, because Edge is my favorite. An absolute, like, poster boy, love. Edge is just my favorite, and I can't, like, those sort of guys who are just like, I can't say anybody else but him, because if I do, I have somehow betrayed everything that I love. So I have to say Edge. I think it's the full circle if he wins. Like, Daniel Bryan is, like, it's a weird sort of thing where I've said before, where Edge and Daniel Bryan pretty much have the same story. They were 2 guys who were so in love and dedicated to the business, and it was ripped away from them. They had to retire out of no choice of their own. They were told they could not compete anymore. They were not allowed to compete. And then all they did for the next how many years, strive to get back. I like to sort of, remember when Edge first came back, people sort of said, oh, there's another part-timer. And I was like, no. Edge is not a part-timer. Edge is that dusty old can of baked beans at the back of the shelf who's always been there but just never been allowed to move. He's always just been on the shelf. He's always been striving and finding some way to come back. And he did, just like Daniel Bryan. They did everything they could in order to get back to doing the thing that they love, so that when they do choose to retire, it's on their terms and it's their choice. It's not ripped away from them. And again, also another similar was Roman Reigns with the leukemia. Like, when that came out, it was the first time, like, the wrestling world had gone silent for a long time, where it was that point where reality truly bled in. So it's, for all 3 of them, it's an incredible story of just sheer determination and, as Edge puts, grit, in order to come back to do the thing that they love, to be at the top of their game, that all 3 of them are at our main event in WrestleMania. But I've just loved Edge just slightly longer than the other 2, and I feel like he's like a wrestling dad to me, so you can't not support your wrestling dad. So yeah, Edge is mine, but I'm allowed to say that. Like,
oh, well, what's cool about it too is I think we are coming on, like, to the day, like, when he officially announced his retirement 10 years ago, and proposed that he finally achieves that. And one of the things too, like you said, like, when people are saying he's a part-timer, and I remember people were complaining, I'm like, oh, well, the Edge and Randy Orton match at WrestleMania last year was over 30 plus minutes. It was too long. But I'm like, do you understand that the story going in, he RKOs his wife, the friendship, the felt, like, everything that's encompassed with it. Like, you know what I'm saying? You're complaining that it's too long. It had a great finish. It had
also, why are you complaining when there's a show on? There's a bloody pandemic going on about, and they managed to do an entire show. Shush, like, I know. Behave yourself.
Jesus, like, this is, like, everything that's going on in the world, we're trying to have a little normalcy and try to, like, get away from what's going on in everyday life, and they put on something that was spectacular. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where, whatever, shush, like you said, but it's true. But it's one of those things when it comes to Edge and everything that's encompassed. I want to see him win. Like, the thing with Christian at the Royal Rumble, and Christian's doing his thing now in AEW, but it's just amazing to see those guys come back. Like, I was an Edge and Christian fan, Reek of Awesomeness, 5-second pose, give me it. When Edge did his solo run, Christian did his solo run. On Americans, Edge and Hulk Hogan, Edge and Randy Orton, like, everything that he was involved with, he made great.
I just love the pair of them, both Edge and Christian, at the age of 40, have decided to get in the best shape of their lives.
Right?
I genuinely had the honour of doing a tour with Edge in the UK with a company called Inside the Ropes, which I genuinely think my friend Kenny McIntosh, who booked that, purely booked Edge to see me get flustered, because I'm Miss Cool, Calm and Collected. But when Edge walked in the door, I ran out. I actually ran away. Like, I ran to the bathroom and I was like, I'm not ready for this. Like, he walked in and I was like, no, I'm not ready. I need to give me a minute. I think they genuinely did it for that. But the fact that there was a point where Edge was talking about how he told a story about when he won the world title for the first time and he didn't go to the gym for like 2 years. And I was like, what? What? How? But saying that, but now is in the best shape of his life. Yep. So is Christian. When Christian walked out on that Rumble, I was like, hold the boat. What have they been doing in the Rocky Mountains that they've come out looking like this? But yeah, and like even Beth, when Beth was in the Rumble, she was in like the 2019 Rumble. Yeah. What an absolute boss. She looked incredible. She was in that match for so long, and then her cracking her head open, the blood is gushing out of her head, and she's like, no, I'm staying in. I've got things to do. I love that. Just an absolute boss of a woman. Like, love her. And that, like, I mean, yeah, it's just, I'm like, what are they doing in the Rocky Mountains that make them look like that? Like, I'm going to go there. But yeah, like, no, for me, that match, I have to go with Edge. And yeah, as you're saying, like, 10 years essentially from the day where it was all taken away from him with no choice. It just, that was it. He had to, and I can't even fathom what that would be like, to completely dedicate your life to something that you truly love, and you get to that pinnacle of that. You know what I mean? You're at the top of the mountain. You've climbed the ladder. You've broken the glass ceiling, and it's just all taken away for you, and you just can't. That's it. And the fact that they just, instead of just accepting that, all three of them, one thing I give them, all three of them was like, nah, I'm not accepting that. I'm going to go back to doing what I love, and there is nothing any of you can. And when I come back, you're going to put all of us in the main event. And that all of them have done. So that dedication and heart and just drive out of every single one of those three guys going into that match is so inspirational, and will be inspirational for people not just striving to be in wrestling, like people that have leukemia and people that have had major injuries that have completely altered their life can look at those three men in that main event of WrestleMania and know that even though things might not be perfect, because I'm pretty sure Edge and Daniel all constantly checking their necks, they're not probably in the perfect shape, but they're able to do the thing that they love again, and that you can still find a life afterwards to find something that you love. And that if you have the mindset that you're doing something, you can do it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that match, and I'm just looking forward to being like, yay, Edge! But I swear to God, if he retires, I will be so pissed, because it's one of those things. Although he's my absolute favorite, like, he is one is Edge for me. I have never had the honor of seeing him wrestle. I just never ever got the chance to do it, because my parents, when I was younger, just kind of thought this might be a phase. So I never ever got the chance, and I thought, I'm going to get to see him at WrestleMania. Then the world went on fire. I thought it was the Dream Mania Tampa, the original one in 2020, because not only was I going to get to see Edge wrestle, which was the absolute bucket list, a dear close personal friend, Drew, who was going to win the world title, and that was the dream. I was like, I'm going to get to see both of these things. I can't believe it. This is the best. And then the world went on fire, and it didn't happen. And Drew's now getting his match in front of people, and Edge is back, and I was like, I swear to God, if Edge retires, I'll go find him and be like, no, you're not. Get back in that ring. Not until I see you wrestle. You're not getting to. But yeah, I'm very excited. Very excited.
I think the hashtag great. I got to say, look out, Edge, in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, because Molly Spartan is coming for you if you retire.
Mm-hmm. I'll find you. I'll climb those ruggies. I will find. I know your house plate says Copeland. I watched that documentary with the Beth Icon thing. I've seen your house plate. It says your name on it. I'll find you.
Last thing I will say about Edge before I have you promote the social medias. Okay, he's had many theme songs over the years, and me, I'm a music guy. I love all types of music. All right, You Think You Know Me, Rob Zombie's Never Gonna Stop, or Alter Bridge's Metalingus? Which one's your fave?
The thing is, I think as a performer, I'm a massive Alter Bridge fan, so I do think it's the perfect. But he's been somebody who's managed to have absolute belting music his whole career. Because everybody sometimes has that at the start, like that kind of tune that you're a bit like, okay, they're in the door. They'll get proper music in a bit. But he's always had bangers. But no, I think Metalingus is probably my favourite. Rob Zombie, though, is just Rob Zombie. He's just an incredible creator across the board, be it music to film. But no, I think I do like myself a bit of Alter Bridge. I will go with Metalingus is probably my favourite.
I'm right there with you because I remember as a kid, like, the You Think You Know Me, very generic. But when he came out to like Rob Zombie's Never Gonna Stop, Margarango, number 95. I'm like, all right, I can get into that. And then he comes with Metalingus, and I'm like, you know what, this fits. It's good. It has a nice little sound to it. And I mean, Alter Bridge, you can't go wrong with some Alter Bridge. I mean, around the time WWE's used their themes like Find the Real and Rise Today, like you can't go wrong with some Alter Bridge. So I think that was the best one that fit him. So I'm right there with you on that one.
Yeah. And when they did the retirement video, they played Alter Bridge, Ghosts, the Ghosts of Days Gone By.
Yes.
Oh my God, I can't listen to that. I want to cry every time. Genuinely see when he retired the following night on Raw. So in the UK, if you're watching wrestling, like you have to be dedicated. Like wrestling starts at 1 a.m. Like Mania starts at 1 a.m. And obviously some Manias have been very long, so you're sometimes not getting to bed till 6, 7 a.m. if you're coming from some sort of venue to where you've been watching it to home. And some people just go straight to their work after they've watched Mania here because they have to. But I remember staying up to watch Raw because the Raw after Mania is always the best Raw. And my parents waking up and my mum thought somebody had died. Like she thought a friend of mine had died or something. Because I was like, I was just an absolute mess of a human being. And my mum thought somebody had died. She woke up because she heard me crying. And she was like, is everything okay? Like, what's wrong? Like, oh God, like, is everything fine? And I was like, it's just and she was like, oh my God, her Edge is retiring. I was like, yeah. She was like, okay, I know that's upsetting, but like, it's okay. He's not dead. And I was like, I know, man, still. I was a mess. And got the days of Ghosts of Day Gone By. What? No. I hear it, I love it, but I do start, even though I know he's back, I still get that like, oh no, it's that song, like, the slow, oh no, like the slow-mo walk with a belt and that music playing, and I was like, I can't do this.
It's like the back in 2008 when Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels had that amazing match at WrestleMania 24, and then the next night you hear Fuels Leave the Memories Alone. It's like, oh, like right in the heart.
But anytime you hear Creed, Sacrifice, that's another one that you're like, I'm okay. That's fine. I'm all right, I'm fine. But no, Ghosts of Day Gone By is my one for Edge. I just, the chin just starts trembling. I'm like, I'm okay. Even though I know he's back, even though I know he's fine, even though I know he's got a happy family and like all that, I'm still just like, no, I still feel it. But my mum just going, that night when I woke up thinking someone had died, and it was just a wrestler retiring, and I was like, it wasn't just a wrestler, it was Edge. Like, don't talk about him.
Now, you see, really quickly, I'm just going to say, when you were talking about like My Sacrifice by Creed, it kind of reminds me of like when WWE had the Desire film, the Desire videos that they put out. There was one that they did for Jeff Hardy with Our Lady Peace Is Not Enough. And I'm like, oh. And then they did the one with Stone Cold that had My Sacrifice. And again, I'm like, oh, it's one of those pieces. Now, I'm going to throw you back to this one. 2006, when Edge won the WWE title, when he beat Cena, he cashed in the Money in the Bank. Do you remember when they did that package and it was Stains right here that they did for Edge?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Like that one, like that was the hot song at the time. And then it's just him cashing on Cena, and you always find the way to keep me right here waiting. Oh,
2006 was great.
it was.
Like, there's so much in it that's so good watching back. Where like I'm like right in a pure 2006 moment, like looking back. I was watching like SummerSlam in 2006 with like DX versus Shane and Vince, and he just kept bringing people out the back and was like, get them, and I was just like, yeah, and then eventually him having to go down, and 06 was a banging year, to be honest. So much happened.
From top to bottom, Ray winning the world title, everything that happened that year. Oh, you're making me smile. Oh, professional wrestling. No, professional wrestling, people. This is what it is. It's professional wrestling. Now, Molly, before we close this out, this is where I step back. Ladies first, please promote Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where everybody can follow you on all forms of social media. The floor is yours. Links will be in the description below this audio. Go ahead, Molly.
I genuinely think I'm one of the most easiest people to find. Just Google Molly Spartan. You will find it on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, are all Molly Spartan. I think I'm real Molly Spartan on Facebook, but I mean, who really uses Facebook apart from talking to their uncles and aunties that we sometimes cringe at when they post some strange, like, an angel is following you today post, and you're like, okay, calm down. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. Just Google Molly Spartan, you'll find me. Predominantly right now, I'm mostly performing ICW Fight Club on the WWE Network is the predominant home. Actually, I think I'm on episode tomorrow night, which will go live on the network roughly around 5 p.m. in the UK. I think it's like noon, 1 o'clock in the US. I say roughly. They never put it up at the same time each week for some strange reason. Sometimes it goes earlier, sometimes it goes later. But it will be on up tomorrow, which is Saturday, the 10th of April. I believe I'm wrestling Emily Hayden.
Yep.
So yeah, that goes live tomorrow. But yeah, all good. That's probably the easiest way to find me at the moment. And to watch me is on ICW Network. The WWE Network for ICW Fight Club.
Hey, it's the same thing that we get on Thursdays with NXT UK. Sometimes it's 2 o'clock here in the States. Sometimes it's 3 o'clock. It's okay.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah. Sometimes you're just like, when is it going to go? Oh, it's strange when I'm going, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And then somebody goes, I've just watched your match. And I go, it's 4:30. How? And then I'm like, oh, it's up. Okay. So yeah, but they're not the best on time, but it goes up. And it's exciting to watch.
Check out ICW Fight Club on the W Network. Check out Molly Spartan. If you're not, what are you doing? We got a hell of a talent right here. We got a hell of a person. My goodness gracious. Molly Spartan, do you have any final words? Not just for in general, but just for your fans. I've been supporting you since day one. The fans of Molly Spartan. Go ahead. Any final words for the fans?
I really appreciate everybody's support through it, from my coaches to the individuals who follow me online and follow my career. Hopefully that once I've decided to hang the boots up, eventually people will be happy with the fact that they follow my career and are proud of what I've done. The main thing I want to strive is to create a better environment and a better place for people to work in, especially women. I think we're doing an incredible job just now, but I will never get complacent to where I am, and I will always strive to do better and be better, so that those that are following me will be proud of the career I have at the end of the day.
Beautifully said. And I'm going to say this right now. My final words, 2 things. Number 1, if you want to see her husband do one of the sickest and baddest swanton bombs I've ever seen in my life, check him on each and every week on NXT UK alongside Mark Coffey and Gallus. And
the little like tidbit of information. So when the UK tournament initially happened, when my husband first graced the screens for WWE. The second rope moonsault he hit on Tyson T-Bone had more people looking at it than John Cena did that week. And that was like a weird bit. Somebody came up to him and went, you've had more views than John Cena this week. And he was like, what? And yeah, that second rope moonsault for some reason just really caught the eyes of people. But he does that. He's a strange sort of performer where he learned all the flippy things when he was like quite slim and sort of small, and then he just became this burly big man, but still was able to do these incredibly angelic things. Since like I think the closest I think of, like that's done incredibly angelic was like your Bam Bams, like that kind of hunka chunka man just doing flips. I think the closest maybe also is like Bronson Reed in NXT does like a beautiful splash, like a very Bam Bam splash. But yeah, I do love a big hunka chunka man that can do some impressively graceful things, and my husband is definitely one of those men.
Most certainly. That, I'll be honest, as soon as you said that, moonsault brought back smiles to my face from that tournament. Absolutely. Man, there's a lot of great wrestling out here. We got a lot of great talents. We got a lot of great shows. It is a great time to be a professional wrestling fan. And my last words for you, Miss Molly Spartan, as I always say on the show, beauty, strength, and dominance are three key elements that make women the work of art that they are. Molly Spartan, I include you in those sentiments, and I thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and we'll happily come back on anytime soon.
Absolutely. For Molly Spartan, my name is Mike Larkin. Thanks for listening to another edition of On the Mic with Mike, and I will talk to you next time.